Hello guys, welcome to part 4 of our clinical radiology applications overview series for 2022-2023. My name is Mohammed, I'm one of the RadCast co-founders, and in this particular part of the series we're going to be focusing specifically on the portfolio. So if you want a general overview, go back and watch part 1. If you want to look specifically at the MSRA, that's part 2. And part 3 looks at the interview and the changes that happen at the interview during the 2022-2023 cycle. This is specifically about the portfolio. So like I said, the portfolio was one of the real areas of change in the 2022-2023 cycle. Caused a lot of headaches for a lot of candidates, threw a lot of candidates off guard. And what I want to do in this video is go over the major changes and give you our suggestions in terms of what you can do effectively between now and November to really get those high yield marks that will act as your cushion for the interview and the MSRA once you've been shortlisted for the interview because you've met the MSRA cutoff score. So like I said, this was the area where there was the biggest and most drastic change. It went from 5 categories to 7 categories. 2 new categories were introduced. Certain categories were split into 2 subcategories. They changed the marking criteria to prove commitment to the specialty, which they now call research, into the specialty. They removed intercalation points and they removed MRCP, MRCS points, either part 1 or the full MRCP, or like part A of MRCS or the full MRCS. Now, when it came to the intercalation points, please know that this just wasn't for radiology. This was across all specialties, applications, histopathology, core surgical training. It just wasn't radiology, and this was a higher level decision by the body involved in like overseeing specialty recruitment. They said we no longer want to give credit to intercalated degrees. Pre-medical degrees, for example, those of you that may be applying as graduate entry, for example, you did graduate entry medicine, that pre-medical degree does count. And similarly, if you have a postgraduate degree, that also counted, but intercalated degrees did not. And like I said, they removed points for MRCS and MRCP. Now, in a nutshell, when it comes to your portfolio and the way you upload it to Oriel, it's all submitted electronically. And when you apply in November, you'll be asked to score yourself in those 7 domains if it remains the same. And you give yourself a specific mark. You can't score, for example, you can't click on all the boxes in one of the domains and say, I've got evidence of each. It's not like that. You choose the domain or the description for that portfolio domain where you feel you have the highest mark, because that's the highest level of evidence that you can submit. Then the evidence is uploaded after your MSRA, after you've been shortlisted for interview, and then the assessors will verify your evidence. So they'll look at your certificates, look at your letters, be like, okay, Mohammed gave himself this score in this domain, we agree, tick, or we disagree, we think the evidence is lacking, therefore he will go down into a lower category of marks, okay? But it's all done electronically via Oriel. It was a pretty seamless experience from the candidates that applied in 2022, 2023. Of course, once they found out the portfolio scoring criteria was a bit of a wake-up call, but thereafter it wasn't like riddled with any difficulties in terms of getting the evidence up there, getting the verification scores, appealing them if they needed to. Now, once you submit your portfolio score in November when you apply, you can't change it. You can't be like, oh crap, I found this old publication I did, it's too late. You have scored yourself and you cannot go back and amend that score. Only completed achievements count. So this is particularly relevant to those of you that may be doing additional degrees, for example, like a PG cert in medical education. If it's not completed by the time of the application window closing, you can't get marks for it, all right? Anything that's dated afterwards, for example, you do an audit after the application deadline and the certificate now says that date, it won't count. Only completed achievements count. Please do not take liberties and overclaim. We had a few candidates who portfolio was flagged up. Nothing happened to those candidates from what we know, but you don't want that stress. Like, why would you? Just don't overclaim, because they do say that if you are found like being fraudulent or like just exaggerating the truth, you can be flagged up for probity and to the GMC, and you don't want that. Like, fair enough, you get rejected from the application process, but you don't want to be rejected and also flagged up to the GMC. Like that's just too much. Like, just don't do it. And then finally, within the 2022-2023 criteria, they mentioned a time frame for your achievements, and they said it could only evidence within the last 10 years would count. So if you're applying in November 2023, that means only evidence from 2013 onwards to 2023 would count. All right. When it came to the 7 domains, you can see them on your screen now. We've uploaded the document, the portfolio scoring document, onto our platform, where you can see it on the clinical radiology application course. You can access it for free, just sign up. But the 7 domains were commitment specialty, leadership and management, teaching and training, formal teaching qualifications, audit and quality improvement, academic achievements, prizes and awards. And we're going to go through them one by one, outlining what you needed to get the top marks, and then our suggestions into how to get those top marks. So the first domain was this commitment to specialty, okay? Previously, it was called research into a career in radiology. Now they just called it quite clearly commitment to specialty, basically commitment to radiology. So to get top marks, 10 out of 10, you needed to show multiple significant exposures to the work of a clinical radiology department. Now, a few key points here. Number one, what does significant mean? It means, as it says clearly on your screen, 3 days or more full-time, whole time equivalent, all right? So if you do a half day, that's not a 1, that's 0.5. So you need another like 6 days if you're going to do half days, all right? So it has to be whole day equivalent. Secondly, you need multiple. Now, during the application cycle, initially, they had said that you could do a district general and a tertiary level taste a week, and they would count as 2 separate experiences. An email got sent quite quickly after they released this saying, wait, no, we don't mean that. They have to differ significantly. The reason why is, you got to remember, radiologists aren't just there sitting idly doing taster weeks for everybody. They have to work. They do have a job. And all of a sudden you had candidates going from a district general to a tertiary level hospital just for taster weeks. And it really like made the departments reach like full capacity. Like, we can't like accommodate all these candidates. Like, what's going on? So just because you do 2 taster weeks, let's say 3 days, it won't automatically make you get 10. They have to differ significantly. So you can't be like, all right, I'm just going to copy and paste taster week 1 to taster week 2, job done. No, you'll get a thumbs down. You'll go to probably 6 out of 10. So what we recommend is, for example, in taster week 1, let's say you do more diagnostic radiology. In your second taster week, do more interventional, because that's different exposures. Similarly, if you don't get exposure to the subspecialties that often have a very unique or more specific like day plan, for example, breast radiology with its symptomatic and screening clinics, you may have neuroradiology that is obviously neuro, pediatrics that has a different patient cohort altogether. Do that in your other taster week, because you've got different exposures, all right? For those of you that do nuclear medicine or thinking, actually, wait a minute, I'll do 3 days of nuclear medicine, that's different. You've got to remember, in the UK, nuclear medicine is a subspecialty in its own right. Like, you can apply for nuclear medicine subspecialty training, and radiology is totally different. Yes, there is overlap, and radiologists will do the work of nuclear medicine physicians in terms of the imaging, but they are 2 different entities. So you're applying to clinical radiology, please remember that. You can get exposure to it. For example, you may observe like PET scans, maybe some bone scans, but you are training to be a radiologist first and foremost. Other things that may count if you're more earlier on in your application, like a medical school, you could do a taster week there and then during like a student selected module, student selected component, like these essays where you have like periods, quite lengthy periods, like 6 weeks or something in a certain department. Similarly, you could do an elective in radiology. Those will all count, all right? But you can't do the same experience and be like, yeah, that's two. It doesn't work like that. They have to differ significantly for it to count. And that's just reiterating what I've said. The experiences must differ, especially when it comes to taster weeks. Please do not just go from a district general to a tertiary hospital and expect the recruitment assessors to be like, yeah, good job. They were like, no, that's one experience because you just reproduced the same thing. Moving on to the leadership and management, you have no idea how much this really caught candidates out. They were like, where has this come from? Now, we can't answer that. It's the higher wisdom of the recruitment panel. We will not go into that. There's no point. But this is what you needed to have done to get full marks, 7 out of 7. You need to have held a national level leadership or managerial role involving radiology. And you needed to have done that for 6 months minimum. All right. So if you're applying in November, which is the 11th month of the year, you needed to have started minimum in May of the application year. All right. If you haven't, you're not going to reach the 6-month threshold. So it won't count. All right. Now, you may be thinking, well, how the flip am I going to have a national leadership or managerial role involving radiology? Yeah, we understand. We appreciate that. A lot of candidates like, I don't get how to get those marks. Often with the leadership and management, you either had it or you didn't because of the time constraints, but similarly because of the specificity of what they required. And often candidates, what we had from our experience, were getting around the 5 out of 7. The majority were getting 3 out of 7. All right. So if we look at the lower levels, you get 5 out of 7 if you have a national level leadership or managerial role that isn't radiology. And they give you some examples, for example, being part of like the leadership or management team of a Royal College. They say the BMA on the marking scheme. But candidates were often getting 5 marks, not for the national level role, but having local or regional positions that involved radiology. So for example, they were supporting the nearest medical school's undergraduate radiology society. That's a good option. It's a good strategy. Other things that candidates often did to try and get the 7 out of 7 marks was join radiology societies. One of the big ones that we were aware of was IR Juniors, Interventional Radiology Juniors, a great organization doing amazing things on putting IR on the map. Check them out if you haven't. They have a lot of opportunities. And we interacted with a lot of their members on their committee teams. It was like really interesting to get to know them. And like I said, they do amazing stuff. And then, of course, the lower level, like 3 out of 7, it's outside of healthcare. And that's one thing you need to be aware of. Things outside of healthcare do count. For example, volunteering, charitable work, sports related activities. Don't just read the top marking criteria and be like, I don't have that, so I'm screwed. Rattle your brains, think. Just spend a few minutes, 30 minutes if you need to, even an hour if you need to. Think long and hard. What could I potentially do within 6 months minimum to get these points, all right? Because like I said, this became, from our experience working with candidates, a differentiator category, because often candidates either had it or they didn't. So this is where we'd recommend you try and focus on grabbing any of the marks, 2 out of 7. It's better than 0 at the end of the day. So here are a few ideas. Like I said, check out IR Juniors. You could then also look at like local level positions, for example, being the hospital mess president, the hospital mess lead, the doctor mess representative. Speak to the postgraduate department in your hospital. Could you lead the, for example, the educational timetable for the foundation doctors? Something to consider. You never know if you don't ask. Rota coordinator, once again, another opportunity. Like I said, go find your nearest medical school, see if you can be like their postgraduate lead to try and help them perhaps connect with radiologists in the hospitals to facilitate teaching for the medical school. Not a bad option in our opinion. And of course, non-clinical roles, volunteering lead, charitable work where you've helped out, and then, for example, sports. So key takeaways must be for 6 months minimum, and you need evidence. And this is directly word for word from the actual portfolio scoring criteria. States your name, role, and major responsibilities. Please just don't upload a certificate from, I don't know, like a committee lead. They'll be like, what does this mean? You need to say how long it was for, what you did, what was your role, and what was the outcome of your like impact. Like you need to show that you've actually delivered something meaningful over the 6 month period. Now, we'll cover domain 3 and domain 4 together because they are kind of related. And in previous cycles, it was one domain, like teaching. Now they've split it up into domain 3, which is teaching and training, and domain 4, which is formal teaching qualifications. So to get full marks, 5 out of 5 in domain 3, which is teaching and training, you need to have made a major contribution to a national or international teaching program. What does major mean? It must mean that you've been involved in multiple teaching sessions, not a one-off, okay? Similarly, it's a multi-sessional type of program. And thirdly, it's more than 3 months, all right? So it can't just be, I decided to do like lecture-based teaching on a random Friday and I'll get 5 out of 5. You won't. That will probably be like 2 out of 5, okay? So on principle, you're like, oh, well, this sounds difficult. How do I get national or international teaching? We'll come on to that. But for the majority of candidates, when we get asked questions, they talk often about, oh, I did a few teaching sessions for medical students that come through my hospital. You got to remember those medical students will be from a certain locality. It's a local medical school. So therefore, it's local teaching. Okay, so you could potentially get 4 out of 5 if you meet the other criteria for major, for example, time frame and the number of sessions. Secondly, you need to have delivered teaching. We have candidates asking us, but Mohammed, Jamie, and Uzoma, I organized the program. I didn't deliver any teaching. I organized it. No, you need to have delivered teaching as part of that program. Yes, you can organize it. That's fantastic. Good job. You're already like doing amazing work, but just deliver some teaching whilst you're there. It's not any other like skin off your back. It probably take a few more hours to get some teaching, but you need to have like feedback of your own teaching. You can't just say I organized teaching programs. So just think of what you want to deliver, get the other speakers, but also try and deliver your own teaching. And other things that candidates often ask us is, okay, I've been working on like YouTube channels. I've got like media, I've got multimedia type of teaching. Unless you have feedback that shows what the candidates thought of your teaching, you're not going to get marks for it. Unfortunately, with YouTube, you either get comments or you get no comments and you see your view count go up and up and up. That won't count. You need people saying this was good, this was bad, this could have been better, this is the date of your teaching, etc., etc. But you shouldn't be throwing away any of these teaching and training marks. These are very low-hanging fruit, which you should be picking ASAP, okay? Once again, you got to be cautious of time frame. You need to have done it duration of at least 3 months in total. And 2, you need the feedback as well. But just don't throw away these teaching marks. At the end of the day, most of us have to do for portfolio. It's just a bit of an extension to what we're expected for like ARCP. Moving forward is the formal teaching qualifications. Pretty self-explanatory. Top is a formal master's. Then afterwards is like a postgraduate level PG cert or a PG dip. Then third, to get 2 out of 5 is a teaching course that lasts for 2 days minimum. Like teach the teachers, or what they say is train the trainers. Now, once again, one thing I want to emphasize, pending degrees do not count. So if you're mid PG cert, not going to count. Mid-masters, not going to count. A train the trainers or teach the teachers, that's 1 day, not going to count. All right. So realize that, okay, most of us aren't going to be like, oh, I'm in the fortunate position of about to complete my master's in medical education. So for most candidates, from our experience, they were looking at the 2 out of 5 mark. All right. So once again, be strategic in what you go for. And that leads me nicely onto our own RadCast Med Ed program, which we've called the Fundamentals of Medical Education. It's a 2-day Teach the Teacher course. And one of the interesting things that we've done with this program is we teach you not only the foundations of medical education, for example, the theories, the principles, for example, like assessment, the learning theories, to give you a solid foundation on medical education from a radiology perspective. We try and link it to radiology wherever possible. But also as part of this program, you get an opportunity to participate in our 12-month international teaching program, which we called the RadCast National Teaching initiative. Okay, so as part of that, we will help you develop teaching resources based upon the GMC's UK Medical Licensing Assessment curriculum, which is the curriculum coming for the new medical students that they will have to sit. And it talks about like different imaging pathologies. And through that, when you develop the resources with us, and of course we guide you along the way, you can then distribute them internationally to an international audience, and we will help you collate the feedback and of course give you certification. And these 2 parts of the MedEd program work fantastic together. The candidates that have been through it really enjoyed the process. They learned a lot from the feedback we've got, and they loved the teaching side of things as well, because everyone's got their own flair in teaching. I'm very to the point, as you may have seen, but at the end of the day, we give you an opportunity to like express yourself through the teaching, and it's linked to the different aspects of like the portfolio from a medical education perspective. So if you're interested, you can check it out on the link on your screen. So moving on, audit and quality improvement. Once again, a quite heavy domain, which you should not be losing a single mark on. Because if you look, to get 7 out of 7, you need to have led 2 or more audits or quality improvement projects relating to radiology, which have shown to change practice. Let's be honest, for most of you with a portfolio, you are having to do an audit already. When it's related to radiology, it needs to just have an imaging component to it. That's it, all right? You will hardly find pure radiology audits or quality improvement projects. Often they are affiliated with another specialty. Of course, interventional radiology, you may find very specific IR projects, but that's not like the norm, all right? So you should have no excuse for struggling to get a radiology specific audit. I'll give you one straight off the top of my head, and I haven't even scripted this, all right? CT head imaging in trauma. There you go, nice guidelines, bam, off you go, all right? Ottawa knee adherence rules, another great audit, okay? Anaphylaxis awareness of radiologists. There you go. Like that's 3 already, with literally me just rattling them off as I think. You should not lose any marks, all right? And to do 2 as a minimum, data collection is the hardest part of audits, all right? We all know that. We all hate it. We all like roll our eyes when we have to collate so much data. But once you have the data, you can do so much with it, and you can actually make quite significant changes to practice, which is quite like really interesting. We had a candidate this year do a non-accidental injury or suspected physical abuse radiology audit, looking at like suspected physical abuse in pediatrics and like the skeletal surveys you have to do from a pediatric perspective. And they found meaningful data that actually improved practice, and they got a lot of kudos from the department. So I know most of us, when we do audits or quality improvement projects, it kind of just gathers dust on your desktop, on your laptop. But the ones when you do it like with a real focus, you can make quite significant change. So 3 key points. Number 1, to get top marks, you need to complete the cycle. If you want to show that you've made change, you need to have completed the cycle, because as part of most audit or quality improvements project cycles, you need to like kind of distribute your findings. Often most candidates do like a teaching session. So once you've done that, why don't you just spend like another week completing the cycle, see what the intervention did in terms of impact? You need to complete the cycle. Number two, has to be radiology related. Very easy. Make sure it has an imaging component. And number three, 2 audits as a minimum, or 2 quality improvements as projects as a minimum. Once again, we're not asking you to reinvent the wheel. All right. It's not that long. It's not that arduous. You just got to crack on. If you're struggling for audit ideas, please do not try to like kind of think outside the box and think of something original. Go on Audit Live, just Google Audit Live. This is a great resource from the Royal College of Radiologists, where they have published templates for different audit or quality improvement project ideas. So why are you doing the hard work? Find one that you think you can do in your department and go and do it. Just find a supervising consultant, get it registered in the audit department, and crack on. For those of you that are thinking, okay, what are the easier topics? What we found through experience is those done in like the emergency setting, like A&E, are often the quickest ones to do. So if you're based in A&E, that's good, crack on. If you are thinking of working, just speak with the A&E leads and see what they think. At the end of the day, I would be very surprised to hear from you that we've had consultants saying, no, we don't want to review the efficacy of our department in meeting guidelines. I think that'd be very weird and a bit sus, in my opinion. So I'm sure you'll find very supportive consultants. And of course, from the radiology perspective, we are very keen to support candidates in any radiology related audit. But critically, do not lose these easy marks. All of you should be getting 7 out of 7 in this domain. If you're not, it's a real shame. For those of you that are our international medical colleagues, you may be asking or thinking, well, we don't follow these guidelines in our home country. What do we do? Doesn't matter. Follow whatever relevant guidelines you have in your home country. If you don't have any, or it's very ad hoc, just use UK relevant guidelines as your baseline for your reference point, okay? And then use that to compare your practice against. They want to see that you understand the audit and quality improvement project like process, that you have an understanding of how to improve clinical practice through things like clinical governance, which this falls under. Once again, if you're unsure of even how to start an audit, you've never done one before, and of course you don't want to lose these marks, we have an introductory course which you can check out, enroll, and we teach you how to get through an audit or quality improvement project from like A to Z. So you can check that out if you're interested. Moving on to academic achievements. Once again, very similar to previous years, but now in the 2022-2023 cycle, it was a lot more emphasizing radiology as the higher requirements for like top marks. So of course, for 5 out of 5, you need to have done a postgraduate, keyword postgraduate research degree. Integrated masters, integrated MPhil, integrated BScs did not count. If you have done a pre-medical degree, like for example, you did graduate entry medicine, the pre-medical degree would count, right? So maybe you've done a master's related course before you did medical school, that master's will count. It's just that in the wording from the portfolio, it did specifically mention postgraduate, but candidates were getting the marks for pre-medical degrees. Just integrated medical degrees did not count. Then when you go down the scoring, for 4 out of 5, you need to have 1 peer-reviewed publication relating to radiology as first author. 2 things I want to break down in this one. Number 1, relating to radiology. Anything with an imaging component would count, and it did count. Secondly, first author. Now, we often get the same question, oh, Dr. Khan, I was co-author. So I ask, where were you on the author list, first or second? They go, I'm second, but I'm co-author. Unless you get that in writing somewhere from like the journal or from the like lead author, it won't count. The assessors will see it and be like, you're second in the list. That means you are second author. Journals are often quite specific when they have co-authors. They often give asterisks to say this Mohammed and Jamie and Uzoma were all co-authors. You need to get that in writing, all right? Don't just presume that they will know it was co-author. They won't, and unless you have the evidence, they won't mark it as you being a co-first author, all right? Then of course, to get like 3 out of 5, this is where they introduced like poster presentations. So you could either get 3 out of 5 by having a peer-reviewed publication as first author that isn't radiology, or you've done an oral or poster presentation relating to radiology at a national or international level as first author. Now, when it comes to presentations, they also mentioned, as you can see in the portfolio document we've uploaded, that they said you have to have had your abstract for the conference reviewed. It's not like you're an invited speaker. If you're an invited speaker, it doesn't count, because what they're saying is they're giving marks for when candidates have been selected on the merit of their abstract, because somebody has reviewed the abstract, said this is very great work, we want to hear more about it through an oral presentation, or we want to read more about it through a poster presentation. So you need to have not been invited, you need to have your abstract marked and then being shortlisted, okay? Only those type of conference presentations count. So you may be thinking, okay, what do I do? And that's a very good question, because what we find is candidates really love this academic achievements part of the portfolio. We're not sure why, because after leadership and management, we think this is the second most difficult domain to really crack, because you got to remember, when it comes to publications, there is a large part of it that's out of your hands, and that's the peer review process. You could do amazing work, do really novel scientific research, radiomics, AI, new IR techniques, and it could get rejected by the peer reviewers. Most of the time, if it's not a rejection, it'll be acceptance with amendments. All of this takes time, and you've got till November of the application year to get this all done. Okay? Now, one thing I want to add in, a caveat, is that the portfolio does state that articles in press are also counted. Now, what does that mean? Because I said at the beginning, only completed projects get marks. When you have an article in press, it means the journal has said, great job, we love it, we want to publish it, but not in this edition of the journal. We may publish it in the next edition, which could be 3 months away. That will count, articles in press. Articles in the peer review process do not count. It's only when it's been accepted, but the journal has said we're going to publish it later on down the line. That does count, all right? But you got to be strategic with the academic achievements domain. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, use your taster week initially to make the network. Speak with the consultants, speak with the registrars, find out what people are working on, and of course, offer a helping hand. Like at the end of the day, if you can scratch our back, we can scratch your back. So just work with us. And you got to remember, radiology trainees and consultants have their own portfolios to be working on. And let's be honest, it is part of our portfolio. So if you can help us, you can get your contributions as well. Please do not run before you can walk. I see this a lot in RadCast when candidates like, oh, I'm working on this meta-analysis, the systematic review. We've been working on it for 8 months. I'm like, well, have you done a case report or a case series? Like, no. So I'm like, well, that would have taken you a lot less time. And the peer review process is typically a lot shorter than a meta-analysis or a systematic review. Yes, what you're working on, I'm not doubting the significance of the research, but remember the priority as of now is not to win the Nobel Prize in medicine, it's to get a training number. So play the game accordingly. Get a case report, get a case series. Most cases, I would be very taken aback if I had no imaging. And you just got to have some imaging components to make it count for the portfolio. And when it comes to conferences, you've got to be on the ball, all right? You've got to have these major conferences in your diary. For example, the British Society of Interventional Radiology, the RSNA, the RCR Annual Conference, the British Institute of Radiology Conference, the UKIO Conference. the SR Society of Radiologists in Training, a great society doing amazing work, who have like often their own conference prizes and conference posters and presentations. You've got to be on the ball and submit your abstracts. All right. So that's why if you do an audit, get it submitted, because often these conferences will have journals where they publish their abstracts in, and these journals are peer-reviewed journals. So you could kill two birds with one stone, get a conference and get a publication. And if you're first author, hey ho, it's a radiology journal, you're on track for 4 out of the 5 marks. Okay, so you got to be strategic. All right, don't just start running off to do really complicated research when you haven't even mastered the basics. All right, case reports, case series, work on those, and then work your way up if you have time. But because you've got to be working on the other portfolio domains, and of course the MSRA, which I know people ignore the elephant in the room, I'd be very hard pressed if you're like just churning out papers, because you're probably not using your time very efficiently. Finally, domain 7, prizes and awards. So to get 6 out of 6, you need to have had a prize awarded by a recognized radiology institution, a specialist society, or at a national/international level meeting, or a distinction award of final year primary medical qualification or equivalent. One thing I want to talk about, because we get this asked time and time again, and it was cause of confusion for a lot of applicants in the 2022-2023 cycle, was this distinction award of final year primary medical qualification. What it means is that certain universities will let their medical students graduate with distinction or honors overall. So your MBBS or MBCHB will say MBBS bracket distinction or MBCHB bracket honors. All right. It doesn't mean you get points if you say, for example, got distinction in the final year OSCE. It means your overall medical degree was ranked as a honors or a distinction or whatever equivalent you have. You can't just upload your certificate. You need to have like a letter from the medical school saying Mohammed was awarded honors in his medical degree, final year medical degree, overall, because he got in the top 10% of his cohort. The interviewers and the assessors need to see the criteria for your overall honors to make sure it wasn't just everybody gets distinction. It has to be like an exclusive cohort based upon performance. But this 6 out of 6 category does not apply to you if, for example, you're saying, oh, but Mohammed, I got a distinction in my final year written MCQ. Doesn't matter. It's your overall degree. All right. And if you're unsure, just ask your medical school, was this a thing? And did I get it? If so, ask for evidence. Moving on, for 3 out of 6, it then goes on to like regional level or regional level institution or meeting, and then local level. And when it comes to the prizes, it needs to be eligible for everyone at that specific level. So if it's a foundation prize, all foundation candidates should be eligible. Please note that candidates were not given marks for scholarships or bursaries. All right. We got this time and time again. Candidates getting down marked for submitting evidence of a scholarship or a bursary. They weren't given the points. It has to be a prize. Now, I'm not sure what the real like nitty gritty definition distinction was between those, but that's just what our experience revealed during the 2022-2023 cycle, that scholarships and bursaries were not given the marks. Now, if you're looking for prizes to apply for, first things first, you'll be surprised at how many candidates think that they won't apply because they think hundreds and thousands of candidates will apply for the prize. You'll often find that everyone else has that same thought, so they also don't apply. So just take the jump, have a go. At the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? You don't get the prize. But so what? Your ego may be a bit bruised, but at the end of the day, you've tried. All right, you never know. You may win that national or international prize and bam, you got 6 out of 6 marks. And of course, whatever the prize may be. Now, if you're looking for prizes, we do have our own. That prizes, for example, in our radiology crash course. We also have prizes within our clinical radiology application course. and also for the candidate who scores the highest in our international radiological anatomy competition. Okay, so you can find out more about those prizes on our platform. You can sign up for any of those whenever you wish. And of course, the anatomy competition is fixed dates, so please go check our website to see when we're running that competition and sign up to get your candidate number and save your seat for the radiological anatomy competition. So what I'm going to do now is just wrap up this final part of the series with just our top tips on how to maximize your application. I'm basically going to repeat what I've said in the previous parts of the series, but I just want to kind of like get this into your head, right? I hope we haven't kind of scared you with an overview of the application process, the competition ratios, the cutoff score for the MSRA, the portfolio revamp. That's not the point of this series. The whole point is to give you a realistic overview of what to expect. Now that you know the rules of the game, you can play the game accordingly and have tried to get the best hand possible. And that's all on you now. You need to go away, digest what we've talked about, and make a solid plan that involves MSRA prep, portfolio prep, interview prep when it's ready, and try to collate as much evidence as possible. Of course, we are with you every step of the way. We will guide you wherever we can, but don't be intimidated. Yes, it's getting more competitive, but at the end of the day, you have every chance of getting in. You just got to put in the hard graft. And of course, reiterating what I've been hammering on for the last 4 parts, got to start preparing now. Prepare to fail, fail to prepare. I know you probably get sick and tired of that saying, but it's so true. It's so relevant to most things in life, but in particular the application process. Every point counts. Every point that you can get acts as a buffer for other elements of the application process, whether it's a very mediocre MSRA performance that just was on the cusp of the cutoff, or an average interview performance. Every point acts as a buffer for another part of the application process. And of course, get in touch with us, hello@radcast.co.uk if you have any questions. We'll get back to you, give you personalized support, and give you advice on how we think you can take your application to the next level. So that's the end of our 4-part series. I hope it was useful. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We really enjoyed making this content for you because we're kind of taking our experience from previous years, not just last year, since like 2018 when we've been starting our RadCast support, and we've kind of condensed it into this 4-part series. If you've got any questions, reach out to us, either email or social media. We'll get back to you and look forward to seeing you on our next form of content. Take care, guys. Bye.